Bethesda are now one of the biggest studios in Microsoft's portfolio, and they have been delivering hits since the MS-DOS and Commodore Amiga days. Earlier this summer, they revealed gameplay of arguably their most anticipated title to date. So let's take a flight into Starfield. From a team that has brought us the likes of Elder Scrolls and the Fallout series, it almost seems inevitable that a space-focused RPG was always within their DNA. Announced in 2018, this Xbox and PC exclusive has built excitement from that very day, with very little being shown. But with a 2023 release planned, the gameplay reveal was overdue and has given us a chance to understand just what the team are delivering here. At a headline level, it's based on an evolved version of the Creation Engine, regally entitled the Creation Engine II. It has clear similarities with its rendering output to both Fallout 76 and in some ways Skyrim, which were built on the Creation Engine. Much of the basis that Fallout 4 and later titles ushered in though were physically based lighting shaders and materials. A deferred tile-based rendering pipeline which enables the high dynamic light sources across all games use, volumetric lighting and more accepted modern techniques. But technology delivers a great deal more than just the visuals. Have it physics, aids animation, AI and quest building stem from the engine's Radiant system, and much of these are what make up the core DNA of Bethesda games. As such, I wanted to break the main constituent parts of the engine down, compare them to previous titles, and see how they have or have not improved. Keep in mind, this is all based on work in progress footage, and the team will be working ahead of its launch. As such, all, some, or none of these areas could change upon release. And with that cleared up, let's begin with the cover of the book and those rendering changes.
Welcome to Constellation. We have a lot to talk about.
Now, Fallout 4 and 76 really improved on building atmosphere within that real-world rendering and scale, from your emergence out of the shelters to the ruined wasteland sprawling out in front of you. To the depth it created with volumetric lighting, it instantly had an imposing and grandiose feel to it. Starfield has certainly taken this as the baseline and improved the resolution, the composite levels of those materials, and some form of GI bounce is factored in, but looks better here than it did in the Fallout titles. Scale is again front and center, with long barren vistas much like Fallout. Height fog is again used, which will be a combination of flat 2D billboard sprites that can be raised and lowered to create depth and simulate atmospheric scattering of the air pollution and light reactions. Then volumetrics are also used, but mostly here within the interior sections. These do appear to have a distinct change though from those exterior sections, just like Fallout and Fallout 76, where I suspect these sections actually load into the bigger indoor areas, and that can then change the rendering, which is what we're seeing here. Shadow casting light sources are obviously much higher due to the electrical lights dotted around them, as are the shadow map quality themselves compared to outdoors, which use a softer penumbra effect, which is better than previous titles, but obviously a much lower resolution and cascades, which can cause dithering and flickering. These do appear to be using a reconstruction or at least part of the TAA specific pass, causing some creatures' shadows to be more stable but exhibit ghosting artifacts as they move. The light and shadows are mixed with volumetrics, creating a metallic look to most surfaces and sections here, with high gloss surfaces metallic or not. This also shows that from what we can see anyway, screen space reflections likely remain within the engine, but they're not used here and not replaced with ray trace reflections or other post effects. Now this is inherently not a bad thing, but the game does use a great deal of SSR on water bodies in previous titles, and of all the areas shown so far, this doesn't appear to be the case, meaning projected cube maps and imposter light probes are relied on to simulate specular highlights and emphasize material quality. This may be a dual target of keeping resolutions and performance as high as possible across all platforms, ensuring that it can scale and run on the base Xbox One or lower end PCs, as this forms a good portion of its intended marketplace. A good start for sure, with rocky surfaces and tech-noir-like cities showing that the art and tech team have created a variety within the engine and the game world overall to ensure that we do not have 1,000 plus planets that are various shades of copy-paste grey. This also includes some nice fauna and flora sections, and I desperately want to see more of the worlds that the team have created. Characters and emotions are another core area of the game, and Starfield does look to have made a significant improvement here. The PBR materials show better and more fleshy skin, a simulated subsurface scattering is present, specular highlights in skin and higher bone rigs on faces themselves show a demonstrable improvement over Fallout. As these conversation sections will incorporate both main and side quest NPCs, the quality is also much higher here from the examples shown, as they likely form the core story part. Performance capture here would be far too large an undertaking, so these will likely be built by using an improved text-to-speech phonetic system, which we've seen in earlier games and other titles. The shape of vowels and letters is good, with a good blend of facial expression to emphasize the meaning, again improving on previous titles. Like many of these solutions, it can have wooden moments, but I'm confident the sheer extent of dialogue, story and quest it will contain, the level and quality shown here is certainly good enough to allow the team to iterate as fast as possible whilst delivering high quality stories for us to enjoy. And it will be interesting to hear more on the specifics around what they've done here to balance the script and voice recordings within that automated or procedural animation system. The actual character models you create are not as impressive though, with the same issues we've seen in earlier games, namely eye parallax, blinking pupils and emotion all looking very flat and effectively not convincing you they're humans at all. Made worse by limited facial bones, low hair cards and general vertex shifted feature set to choose from. That said, you will likely not see yourself a great deal in the game, so it may not be that impactful, but it is far from the best avatar creator we have seen.
So, you found something?
The new guy found it.
You dug up the artifact, right? That means you saw it. The visions?
The artifact you found appears to be one of many, scattered across the galaxy.
Animation itself is another area that always has mixed results in Bethesda games. Starfield certainly shows big improvements here. Running, combat, hiding and even walking show clear shifts between animation cycles, helped by that Havoc integration here when shot or hit, significantly improving this on the very wooden and flat death animations of older titles. But this section here, as you come into the room, the stiff attack from the enemies and relatively weak grip on life they appear to have, means they look little more than low-level cannon fodder. This is mirrored against other set AI routines being played out and offers a stiff-looking combat example, one not helped by another key area that remains from all their previous titles. Dynamic movement of the world, and specifically foliage and destruction. Boxes are either crates to open or adamantium barricades that are equally weighted and floaty or immovable. If I could make a request to the team, it would be to integrate physics more into the world itself, to allow trees, shrubs to bob and sway around explosions and gunshots, objects to break and react to pressure waves of explosions, break down when used as cover under fire, and even form tactics within your gameplay, such as planting explosives for traps to create bridges to fall, rocks to crumble or more. This would not only enhance the visual presentation we see, but also improve the interaction and tactical elements of gameplay. I do need to caveat this again with a statement at the start that this is what we've seen so far. It may already be in the game or planned for launch. The point is the world and materials look great throughout, but the physicality and fragility of the world is an area I would still like to see improve. Animals, robots and NPCs are another area that is always of good quality in Bethesda games, but not the best. The panning and walking shots on Terra Firma show that little has changed here. Spider-like creatures or an aliens-like cargo skeletal robot all look similar to what we've seen before. This backs up my earlier comment on iteration. Clear similarities to No Man's Sky are unavoidable, but the resource collection would be significantly improved with more dramatic and effects-based level of geometric destruction as you break off parts for mining. This, paired with procedural destruction of enemies, could really help raise the exploration and combat sections and increase that physicality again. Everything looks very good and physically very plausible, but the interaction and rigidity of it all can lessen the strong impression it has in other areas.
It would appear that pirates of the Crimson Fleet are using the facility.
And that is the space sections here. The opportunity with the space and galaxy travel, for me, is very exciting. It takes me back to the days of Elite and trading cargo or choosing to be a bounty hunter. This could be a hidden gem of the game overall, as you take on missions and then engage in dramatic and dynamic space battles with friend and foe alike. Building your own ship, designing the layout, the chassis, the cockpit, the weapons arsenal and more. This is sci-fi heaven to a Trekkie fan like myself. It really has the potential to create a core character to complement your own avatar design and allows you to form a bond with your ship and your crew you may employ to run it, or the resource mining stations you may build. Combat looks to play into the floaty physics we see elsewhere in the game, and it works perfectly here. Particle explosions, dogfight, cloak and dagger, and even warp speed travel. The potential here is for far grander and bigger battles with AI-controlled comrades and a fleet of AI-controlled foes. This for me was the single biggest factor that Starfield demonstrated and had me hooked, not only in what they actually teased, but more so the potential it demonstrated for the title that could scratch a huge aspect of that lone space marine itch, the RPG area that many of us still have. I cannot wait to see more from the team later this year and what this could add to the exhaustive package they show. Some gaps or questions do remain. How linked are the space travels to the planet landings, for example? Rumblings are these sections are merely canned animations played out as you enter the atmosphere or leave it. For me, this would be a grave error, as one immense and evocative aspect of No Man's Sky is the ability to run to your ship, take off through the clouds and stratosphere before being plunged into open space, and even more so reverse that, travel and enter the planet from space. This could and should be a core target for the team, as I think the effort spent here would lift the game's enjoyment, atmosphere and above all agency for the players, as I hope this is a key factor they are including. The general range of planets and locations shown is positive, with more space creatures, fauna-filled and animated planets, dense neon metropolises, in addition to the barren craters, rocky plains and more we've seen so far. The art and tech team have certainly combined here to improve many aspects of older titles. They use far more post effects and alpha effects to create atmosphere and density. They use light and certainly shadow casting light sources far more often, which improves the solidity and grounding of characters and objects in the world, which you can see quite clearly in this footage. The other area to discuss is the game's target resolution and frame rate. It clearly targets 4K from the footage shown and a 30 FPS level on Series X. I think they need to offer a dynamic 4K 60, which would go a long way, I think, to help alleviate the well-founded worry of Bethesda games struggling to hit that 30 FPS target. Fallout 4 did have some issues when it was launched on Xbox One and PS4 back in 2015, and although the PS4 was worse at the start and later patched, both still remain with some impactful sub 30 FPS sections that did affect your enjoyment. This work in progress footage here did highlight some dips below that 30 FPS level at times without a frame graph required, but the release date a good way off and the prior history of Bethesda titles, I have a cautious but optimistic view of the final release. Overall, what was shown here from Starfield was a great teaser to what could land and be a huge hit for both Bethesda and Xbox come 2023. I really am looking forward to seeing more of the title once it gets closer to launch, and hopefully this will be a big game that draws more people back into space sci-fi, which for me is one of my favourite genres. Anyway, that's it for another tech deep dive into game and previews. If you like this or much more, then keep it IGN and Performance Reviews, and I'll catch you on the next one.